Hello, I'm Scott Bogie here with Zack Borrego ahead of his fight against Bruce Xavier at Fury 102. How are you doing today?
Pretty good, my man. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And how are you feeling ahead of that fight on February 21st?
I'm feeling good. It's been somewhat of a longer layoff for me. I would say I think I'm at like 6 months of not having a fight. So I've definitely been itching to get back in there. There was a few fights that fell through earlier in the year, and I just feel like the timing maybe for those fights wasn't right, and so things have lined up, kind of good for me. So I'm eager to get back in there and ready to perform.
And how do you feel like Bruce is going to come out into this fight? Do you feel like he is just going to be one of those stand and trade kind of guys? Do you feel like he's going to mix it up? What do you feel like he's going to come into this fight looking to do?
Mm, I don't know. I think kind of watching a little bit of his tape, he's definitely got, some sort of power in his hands. He is a BJJ black belt, and so I definitely expect him to use that as well. But whatever way the fight decides to go, I'm prepared. I've been training, for the fight to go anywhere, and
Yep.
I feel really good. I think though that, once I start kind of getting in my groove and touching him up and he feels my power, I definitely see him trying to wrestle and get this to the ground. So, regardless wherever it goes, I'm prepared and I'm just, excited to put on a show.
And am I correct in saying your head coach is Greg Borrego?
Yeah, that's my dad. That's
Yeah.
my pop. So, he's been my head coach basically since, I mean, he's my dad, so he's always been in my corner. But I would say maybe about a couple months ago, my last camp, I went out to a gym in Houston. So I'm from San Antonio. There's a gym out in Houston called War Training Center that's about 3 hours from me. And I've been spending my camp out there about 3 days out of the week. I go and train with those guys with Coach Adam Copley and Jeremy Mahone. So they're also going to be in my corner. But I've kind of created a good relationship with those guys, and then not to mention the guys that I work with here back in San Antonio, Ray Rodriguez out of Unity Training Center, also a UFC vet, and then my boxing coach Matt Wattis. So we'll see how many people we could stack up in the corner, but all of those guys are behind me to get this done.
And do you feel like it's important to go to these different gyms for specialist stuff? Like you're saying, you have your boxing coach. I hear you have. Do you feel like having that variety is good?
You know, uh, Kind of the short answer is yes. The more experience that you can get, the more bodies that you can get is going to give you different looks, is going to give you a different feel, and all of that kind of like balls up into knowledge that you can take with you into the fight, and as well as the coaching. Like every one of those coaches that I mentioned kind of has their own style of coaching, and I take what I can from it and go from there. So I think it's essential, but on the same time, on the same side of it, I don't want it to seem like you need your home gym. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
need to have a good coach. You need to have a good base, because that's kind of like what's going to be the foundation of your fighting. And I'm a firm believer in, wherever your foundation is, you should be spending, the majority of your time there. But when it's, coming around to fight camp, and that's when you kind of venture off and go and see, these uncomfortable positions, these kind of things that are unknown. But I think at the level that I'm at right now, I'm training at War Training Center with 5 or 6 guys that are in the UFC, and it's just kind of something that was needed, for me to
Yeah.
continue to grow in this sport. I didn't want to get stagnant, and that's not, to like say anything about here the bodies here in San Antonio. It's just it is what it is. This is a business, and if I need to, if I want to be successful, that's kind of the training partners that I need to seek out.
No, exactly. I completely get what you mean. When you are in one place for so long, you kind of just get used to it. You know with your training partners what they're good at, what they're not. You kind of need to take yourself out of that to experience maybe something different, some new matchups.
Exactly, exactly. I vividly remember, the first couple of times that I went to War Training Center, and I'm training with guys like Alex Morano, Zach Reese,
Yeah,
Trevin Giles, all of these guys that are successful in the UFC, and you kind of have like it's a sparring, it's a training session, but you have like kind of like these little jitters, and you're like, oh, it just kind of amps you up. Of course, I'm forgetting my guy Anthony Ivy. He's uh, needs to be in the UFC. But
yeah.
same thing with him. He's all of those guys are just great training partners. They're going to push you. There's no easy rounds, and I feel like now I'm getting to a point where I'm becoming that guy as well. Like I'm becoming a tough round for them, and it's just the energy is good. It's constantly feeding off of each other, and that's kind of like what you need going into a fight. So.
And what do you think has been the biggest thing that you've learned since moving to when training with these UFC vets?
Um, I think it wasn't something that I learned because I'm very proud of my work ethic. Even
Yeah,
when I was training here, like I'm trying constantly to find training partners, or I'm doing, 3 or 4 workout sessions a day. And I think being over there, it's just kind of a good energy because I'm surrounded by all of these like-minded people. Like
yeah.
I'm doing close to 5 sessions a day over there. And the guys that I go up with from San Antonio are doing the same schedule as me. So sometimes when you're doing that, it can get a little monotonous, and you can feel like, man, am I supposed to be doing this? Or, is this next training session worth it? But when you have guys that are like on the same mission as you, who are doing what they can to get better, it just feels good. And I can honestly say, there's a little like we're always kind of playing around with each other as far as like San Antonio versus Houston, but Houston's really grown on me just on the fact that like these guys are willing to do what it takes to get to the
Yeah.
next level, and so that's kind of the biggest thing that like I don't want to say I've learned, but I've kind of reassured myself that like if I want to get to this next level, that's the type of stuff I need to be doing.
And then you start to welcome the Fury FC as part of your family. All of your fights, all 11 of them so far, including this one will be the 12th, have been under
Mhm.
the Fury FC banner. How, what would you say has been the main drawing point to Fury?
Well, I've definitely spent a few, I would say like a year of my amateur career was
Yeah,
spent elsewhere. And COVID had a lot to do with that. When I started fighting, it was around 2021, so we're still kind of in the mix of all of
yeah,
that, and Texas was completely shut down. But I've fought in places like Mississippi and Louisiana, and just these odd places that are great for to get your feet wet. But Fury is just such a premier organization that if you are successful, you can get a call up really quickly, and that's kind of like what happened in my early career. Like I was 3-0 as a pro. I think I had 3 finishes, and boom, I got a short notice call to the Contender series. And so, that was really early in my career, and there was a lot of things that I had to learn that I'm continuing to learn. But I don't, I've had offers to fight other places. I've had offers to go to Karate Combat. I've had offers to go to LFA and all of these other organizations. But Fury is doing all the things that they're doing. There's no real need to go seek out these other organizations. Um, and just the level of talent, if you can be successful in an organization like Fury, more than likely when you get the call up to the UFC, you're going to have that same level of success. Obviously you're going to but the level of talent that's fighting in Fury is second to none. So I love fighting for them, and I definitely think that um I'm becoming kind of like one of these guys that are like a staple for Fury. So
and another good thing about Fury is they're not just going to pad your record. If you are one of the better guys in the organization, they are going to give you another one of the guys who is in that top of the range as well. I was speaking
right.
about it the other day. I think it was Damian Anderson versus Wonderelli, who
Hmm.
got matched up a couple of events ago. Both those guys are on that trajectory for that UFC. However, Fury put them both on the same card, put them against each other, just so the fans could see that fight earlier on. Do you feel like that's another reason why a lot of fighters do join Fury, is due to that matchups?
No, yeah, 100%. I think if you just look at my losses, like
Yeah,
all of my losses are against champions or people who beat the champions. So I have a loss against Logan Woods, which was my last fight. He beat the current Fury FC champion, knocked him out. Is one
yeah,
loss. The loss before that is Jordan Wright, an ex UFC vet for I don't know how long he was in the UFC, 3, 4 years. And then, of course, Adam Vigil, who's now the Fury FC champ. Lawan Davis is another one that is now the Peak FC champ, and I haven't really kept up with him, but like all of these guys are champions in other organizations or organizations that I'm currently fighting for. So um, I definitely think that it's Fury is on that same note. If you're going to be signed to Fury, if you're going to go into Fury, you have to understand that like everyone is trying to get to the UFC, and they're using Fury as kind of that vessel to get through. So if you're going to try to go and get an easy matchup or, a pick me fight or whatever, it's not going to happen. There's too many guys that are trying to go through the Fury route to the UFC. And, we know now more than ever that the matchmakers want to see battle tested people that are, that have shown that they can compete at a high level. And so, kudos to Eric and Rich for putting that together and making sure that there's good fights all across the board.
and do you think another thing about them getting this talent is due to their development? Like for you, for example, you were starting on their amateur series, you're fighting for them
Mm-hmm.
in their amateur, and then you went into the pro scene. You kind of made that step up through them. Did that make that
Right.
any easier?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think I only had 2 fights with Fury as an amateur, and
Yeah,
my second being for the belt. And from the very beginning, like I think, I showed that I have talent, and that if it's something that like we want to continue to grow together because on the flip side, the organization only grows with the talent that it has as
yeah,
well. You know what I'm saying? And so I think if you have talent and you have the talent to take you places, they will work with you as far as like, okay, I want to start my amateur career and I want to have like this kind of gradual build up process. And so I think, there's tons of I just saw there was an amateur card last week. And if you look at some of those fights, like some of those fighters are like at a pro level, you can
yeah.
you can definitely see that they're ready to make that jump. And so I just think, all around the MMA scene in Texas and really like the whole Southwest region is kind of owned by Fury, and I would say they're arguably the premier organization in the United States as far as being a feeder. I know LFA's kind of got that name, but I think Fury's starting to take that over, and they're definitely showing that one, if you're successful, you can make it to the next level, and then two, if you're not, you have so many matchups that can get you ready to make that jump.
Exactly. And that's kind of been shown for probably the Contender series last time. I think it was like over 10, probably, I think it was 12 maybe, people from Fury going into that Contender series. So they are starting to become known as that feeder and challenging the likes of the LFA for becoming that number one slot.
Right.
How did you get into the MMA world? I know you said it was during that COVID era.
Yeah, so if you want to take it maybe a step back further, like I've always done martial arts. My dad has a martial arts gym.
Yeah,
We have basically been training my entire life, and so I started off doing kind of the point karate scene. I transitioned over into a kickboxing, mostly stand-up arts at the time. I was training jiu-jitsu, but it wasn't really like our main focus. I left to play college football, and when I was done and graduated, I moved back, and was kind of like in search of something to continue to compete again. So I started competing in, some kickboxing fights, some MMA smokers, and kind of just, fell in love with the competition again. And basically during COVID, obviously everything shut down, but for me and for my dad, who's owned a gym for, 25 plus years, it kind of just gave us more time to train. And, through that training, like if you're training 6 to 8 hours a day, like it's just kind of bound to say, hey, let's find a fight. And so with my dad and our gym being somewhat established in the martial arts scene, we were able to link up with Tim Crater out of Louisiana, Gladiators MMA. He's kind of famous for being Dustin Poirier's like first MMA coach. But he was the one who set me up with my first fight and was kind of like, helping us and guide us through the amateur scene. Um, as well as Robert Drysdale out in Las Vegas, Zenit Jiu Jitsu. Again, all of these like big names that ironically like my dad just knew and kind of like guided us as to like the best ways to do it. And so that's kind of how it took off. I started my amateur career at 24 years old, and 4 years later, I'm a pro now with almost 12 fights, which is crazy because I've only been a pro going on 3 years. Like this fight will mark my third year as a pro, and I'm already 12 fights in. So my activity has been crazy, and there's been a lot of learning lessons as well as some big highs, and you know how the game goes. You're gonna have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, but I feel like this year things have kind of just been completed as far as like me understanding the game, me learning and being able to evolve as a fighter, and so that's kind of like how I got started, and I think this year is going to be big for me.
And how was it being on that Contender series, being matched up with Bo Nickal and being able to test yourself against him and then seeing what you have been able to do since that fight?
I think the opportunity was given to us. Of course, it was a short notice fight. There was a lot of things that happened behind the scenes that a lot of people don't really know, and I'm proud of the way that I handled it. Because I think a lot of people wouldn't have even taken the fight. I think
Yeah,
the way that I was able to kind of withstand not only the big pressure of a main event for the Contender series against the number one prospect in the world basically, but a lot of outside stuff that a lot of UFC people do know about and kind of understood what was going on. I'm glad that I did it. I feel like that fight on the biggest stage, like I felt like everything went wrong, and as much as that sucks, it taught me so much, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
it's something that I carry with me, and kind of treat it as like a chip on my shoulder just because I know like everything that happened. And even if you want to talk about the aspect of the fight, you know, for as long as it lasted, like it taught me so much as far as the skill level that I need to be at. It taught me the importance of wrestling, and how much I need to emphasize the skill building of wrestling. And overall, I think although it didn't go my way, it's just kind of evolved me so much as a fighter. I was literally just talking about this with one of my training partners, and um, ever since that fight, there's kind of been a jump as far as like my quality of opponents because now I'm the guy that not only fought Bo Nickal, but I fought in the Contender series. And it was really early in my pro career. Like I was only 3-0, but now no one's gonna fight you unless they're trying to make that jump as well. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And so there was kind of like it felt like almost a quick boom, like a quick jump. Now I'm fighting guys that are like on the verge of themselves going to the Contender series, and I myself am only 6 months, 7 months into my pro career, but like I said, I think that everything happens for a reason, and just being able to be there, experience that, and experience everything that came with it has not only made me grow as a fighter, but as a person. And it was great. I know for a fact that a lot of those UFC people do want to see me back, And so hopefully this year we can make it back.
And do you feel like that is part of the beauty from the sport is that one defeat does not define your career? It is getting taught at a learning curve. Whereas in
Mhm.
other combat sports like boxing, like with Deontay Wilder, and that one fight defeat does take a massive hit on their stock. And then two
Mhm.
defeats, people do talk about it potentially hanging up the gloves. Whereas here, you can take a defeat. You have Max Holloway, for example, multiple defeats on his record, and he's still fighting for that UFC title. Do you feel like that is the beauty of the sport?
100%, man. I think, whenever you compare MMA to boxing, you always have the argument of like, well, MMA is a real fight.
Yeah,
MMA is you're doing like a real overall, are you the better fighter, complete fighter? And that reflects in, the losses as well. Like there's so many variables that can happen. You can do 99.9% of the things right in a fight, and that 0.1% can get you knocked out or choked out. And, unfortunately, that's just how the game goes. But MMA is just such an evolving sport that I think the fan base and everyone that surrounds the sport knows that a loss doesn't define your career anymore. And that's something that I'm gonna prove this year, for sure. But same thing. San Antonio is a big boxing community. Like we're very Mexican, Hispanic, prideful. We have a lot of famous boxers that came out of here. One of which Mario Barrios. He's a big name. But a lot of these fans that I talk to, are still kind of making the transition into MMA, and it's kind of cool to show them like, hey, my record is this, but like I'm still one of the top dogs. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
and like I said, I think you're only as good as your last fight, and that's kind of how MMA goes. If for me, example, once I make this win on the 21st, I think it's only going to be up from there, and you can turn around your career so quick. Like there's like a meme. I don't know if you've seen the meme around, but it's like one of your favorite fighter loses, and then in boxing you're like, oh, he's a bum, his career is over. But in MMA, it's like the title reign starts now. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
so it's just like that, man. I think the fans are starting to kind of level up themselves and starting to understand that these things happen. And that's kind of what happened in my last fight. Logan Woods just had the fucking death touch, man. And that fight was going as right as it could be for me. I'm starting to touch him up. I'm starting to find my groove, and one mistake, and boom, quick little flash, and fight's over. So it sucks. It really, really sucks, especially knowing that there was a lot of stuff that could have came from that fight. For example, Logan with that fight went to the Contender series,
yeah.
and I knew that was going to be an option for me as well. But it's just something that you have to, it comes with the game, and the only option is to move from it, and so that's kind of what where I'm at right now with it.
Exactly. And once you get that victory against Bruce, you're gonna get in there, get that stoppage. What are you wanting next? Do you have someone you're particularly wanting to call out, or are you just gonna see what happens?
Um, there's a name for sure on my radar. And I mean, to me, it makes sense. He's undefeated. He recently just fought another undefeated prospect, and that's something that I feel like is not only a good fight, but I think can potentially be a title eliminator. They're trying to get Adam Vigil, the current champion, a fight, and I think that name is definitely on the tip of my tongue, but I'm just at a point right now where after this win, like I want to show that I'm ready for the next level. And, with that being said, like you got to be ready for anyone. So as much as I want to call this person out and, out of full respect, no disrespect, I hate being the guy to talk shit, but I'm kind of open to whatever. Like I really want to show that I have the attitude of like whoever you put in front of me, I'll get the job done. So, we'll see how the fight goes. I don't know as far as his plans, the guy that I have in mind, but I think the promoters know exactly who I'm talking about, and I think that fight's going to be happening soon.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you for coming on today. I'll let you have the final word. Is there anything you're wanting to add or anyone you're wanting to shout out?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I'm very thankful to have to for you to have me on. A quick shout out to my sponsors. So, of course, I have my gym, DKA MMA, War Training Center, Unity Training Center, Black Stallion Boxing, my strength conditioning gym, PlyoFit, a new gym that I've been going to, Raw Performance Training. I have Martinez and Associates. I have a new corn husk company that is sponsoring me as well as individual sponsor Rich Mitchell. All of these guys are showing their support tremendously, and I'm very, very thankful. As you know, some travel and these trainings can add up, and so they're definitely taking care of me. But overall, I'm just excited to perform and make sure you guys tune in February 21st, UFC Fight Pass. I'll be the featured fight of the night. So check me out.
Exactly. Thank you for coming on.